Hi everyone, my name is Kathy Lee. I am the program manager at Animal Place. Welcome to our third annual Farm Animal Conference eSummit. I am joined by one of our non-farm animals, our tortoise. This is Poseidon. Poseidon likes his lettuce, and he sometimes likes to give happy dances when you pet his shell. So you can see he's kind of both eating and dancing for us. Sometimes he gets really into the dancing, but not so much while he has some fresh lettuce to nibble on. So you might be asking yourself, why do we have a tortoise at a farmed animal sanctuary? Well, we don't discriminate. When there is an animal in need and we have the space and capacity to take them in, we will do our best to do just that. Poseidon is joined by two of his friends in here, Hades and Zeus, and they're both burrowed up in this straw right now. So hopefully we'll get to introduce you to his friends later in the conference. Enjoy the rest of your conference and especially this talk that you're about to listen to. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Right now, we're talking with Genesis Butler. She's a 15-year-old environmental and animal rights activist and one of the youngest people to ever give a TED Talk. Inspired by her great uncle, civil rights leader Cesar Chavez, Genesis's talk, A 10-Year-Old's Vision for Healing the Planet, discusses the negative impact of animal agriculture on the environment. She went vegan at the age of 6 and has earned numerous awards and recognitions for her activism. In addition to being featured on an episode of Marvel's Hero Project by Disney+. Genesis is currently leading the Youth Climate Save movement. This is the first youth-led environmental organization that focuses on animal agriculture's impact on climate change and aims to give all young voices a platform. Thank you again for joining us, Genesis.
You're welcome.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Awesome. I just kind of want to start with a general question, a little icebreaker, and ask, what was your motivation for going vegan?
Yeah, well, my main motivation for going vegan was really just the animals when I figured out that we were eating them because I never really thought I was 3 when I first started to kind of realize, but it took me a little bit to notice it was actually a real animal because it just didn't seem like people would even do that to me because I was so little, and even now like I still don't understand why, but I think when I started to realize, because my mom would always give me chicken nuggets, she'd get me like Happy Meals, and because on the commercials it'd be like, you should get these for your kids, they're good for them. So she was getting them for me, and then I started to think, because they're my favorite food, and then I'm like, wow, they're chicken nuggets, so maybe it's like the real chicken. But I was like, maybe it's not. So I just asked my mom, and then that's when she told me that we had to get it from chickens, we would kill chickens, and then it was like, no, like I don't want to eat this anymore. And then me and my mom went vegetarian after that. And then when I was 6, then I started to wonder about milk because I'm like, well, this milk isn't her milk because she was breastfeeding my little sister at the time. So I'm thinking, well, there's no way that we're getting it from her. So then that's when she told me how we had to get it from mom cows, and I was just devastated. And then my whole family went vegan, so it really motivated me knowing what the animals have to go through, and it just really made me want to make a difference and to educate others on this because I feel very passionate about it and I love animals and I wouldn't want to eat them. So yeah, that's really my motivation is the animals.
That's amazing. And at such a young age to make that connection, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Is your mom still vegetarian with you?
Yeah, she's vegan now. My whole family went vegan with me after
Wow,
that.
that's incredible.
Thank you.
So I want to hear a little bit more about Youth Climate Save. Could you explain a little bit about what it is and what your mission is?
Yeah, so I started Youth Climate Save during quarantine actually, because I started to realize a lot of youth, since we were all home and we couldn't really go out much, we were on our phones a lot, and we started to do research and even like listening to the news, like you figure out about climate change, and that's a really big issue for our generation right now is climate change, and we're worried about it. So um, I started to think, well, I wanted to have a safe space for youth to go, especially if they're figuring about animal agriculture and how it's harming our environment, because that's starting to get talked about more often with why you should switch to a plant-based diet and how it can help the environment. So I started to think, well, I wanted to start a place where youth can go and they can meet other youth who are already talking about this issue. And since we were in quarantine, I wanted them to be able to do actions that were from home, because I mean, it's really worrying, especially during quarantine when like you're in your room a lot or you're by yourself and you have a lot of time to think. And I mean, it's always super worrying, but I think especially during COVID it was, because you're thinking about it so much and you're so worried. So I found some actions that we could do online, which was like we would do simple ones that were like we do chalk art in front of our front yard of messages about animal agriculture and how it's harming our environment, or we would make videos where we would all say a quote and then we put them all together, and then those videos would get a lot of shares because our generation's really on social media and we get a lot of our information from there. So we keep on sharing those, or we make like recipe videos about like how to make vegan recipes like tofu scramble or something really good that people would want to try. And then now that we're finally able to get out more, we're starting to go to marches and we'll do like sunflower planting, beach cleanups, and tree planting. So I really wanted to start Youth Climate Safe because I wanted youth to figure out about this issue, because we all figure out about it somehow, and to know that you can do actions, that you can at least do something to help.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So is it
Thank
a
you.
website that they go on? Is there an app? How does it work exactly?
Yeah. On Instagram, we get youth and they just message and say like, "Oh, I'm from so and so and I want to start a chapter," and then I help them from there.
Very cool. Okay. Um, is the Instagram handle Youth Climate Safe?
Yeah, just at Youth Climate Safe.
Got it. Cool. Okay, so you have said that Youth Climate Safe gives animal rights activists a platform to share that information. Why is it so important to you to educate people about the environment?
Yeah, I think it's really important to educate people about the environment because when I first figured out about what's happening with the environment, I was 6 when I was looking up different reasons why it's important to go vegan. And then I figured out about the environment, which at the time I wasn't super focused on that until I gave my TED talk when I was 10. And then I gave that on the environment because I thought this is something that needs to be more spoken about, because it really wasn't, especially with the animal agriculture aspect. So I thought it was something that's really important. And I think it's super important for people to figure out about this, because when you know about this, then you can tell others, and it's kind of like a domino effect. So it can really help. And just anything right now is really helping, because I mean, climate change is a huge issue, and I don't want my siblings to have to worry about this. And I want them to have a thriving planet to live on, and not only for like my siblings, but we're gonna have to leave this planet for future generations, and we don't want them to not even have a planet that's livable. So I think that it's super important, and especially educating with people why it's so important to change to a plant-based diet, because that's one of the easiest ways that you can help fight climate change, just by swapping out items and going plant-based, whether you go fully plant-based or if you're at the grocery store and you're in the milk section, instead of getting like regular milk, you can get like almond milk, there's soy milk, there's hemp milk, there's so many different milks now. I was looking at the store and it was like rows and rows of plant-based milks, which I thought was super cool, that there's so many options now, and even eating more fruits and vegetables instead of getting like meat products, or trying a plant-based meat. Like simple swaps like that can make a huge impact on our environment.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, there's so many substitutions and alternatives these days. It's easy to make a small change like that, which is
Yeah.
awesome. So with Youth Climate Save, it's obviously a youth-led organization. Would you say that your target audience is today's youth?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say that it is today's youth. With Youth Climate Safe specifically, I think it really was for the youth, to get them to have a place where they can share information about animal agriculture in our environment, but I think it also has reached a lot of adults, so it's kind of in the middle now, because youth are the ones who are running it and involved in this, but we're getting a lot of adults that are saying like, oh, I never knew about this, and now I'm going to start swapping to a plant-based diet, or I'm going to transition fully to a plant-based diet. So we're getting a lot of support from adults, whether like they're sharing the videos or they're liking the posts, because so many people are on social media now and we're all seeing these posts. So I think that it's really changing a lot of people's minds, because since we're on social media and that's where we get a lot of our information from, especially our generation. And um yeah, so I think that my target audience is kind of just like in like the middle, whoever figures out about the post that we're doing or sharing.
That's awesome. I feel
Thank
like it's kind of rare for a youth-led organizations to be able to reach such a variety of people. So
you.
that's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Would you say that the most popular or your favorite way to connect with other people is through social media?
Yeah, I would say through social media. I think, especially during COVID, since I couldn't go out and speak, now I'm starting to go out more and be able to speak at like Veg Fest or vegan festivals or just like regular events. I've been getting more invited into the spaces that are just with people that aren't plant-based, which I think is really important now. Like I think some people sometimes are like, oh, well, why would you want to be around people that eat what she's saying not to eat? But I think it's super important because some people just don't know this information, and it's super important because if I'm always speaking to people who are vegan and already know this information, I think it's great. But I think reaching people who are still eating these products, like the meat and dairy products, I think it's super needed and important, because then they'll be able to know about why it's so important to switch to a plant-based diet.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Cool. So have you been to any of those events like Veg Fest before you were a speaker there? Did you get to experience it that way as well?
Yeah, I think well, mainly I used to do Veg Fest for a while.
Mhm.
But I do them every now and then. Actually, I have been trying to get into more spaces where there's like world leaders or people in power that I can talk to, because I think that it's super important to get involved with um people that have the power to make a difference, and that aren't only the people that are saying, well, I'm going to do something about this, but actually do it. And I think it's super important to put pressure on them, especially from youth, because then they know like this is really important and it's needed. And like if I don't do something about it, then who will? So I think it's super important now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never really thought about that. I mean, these people are doing amazing things, but letting them know that you're supporting them and have the same interest and want to fight for the same causes, I bet motivates them. So
Mhm.
that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if you could tell us about a time that someone has changed their way of thinking because of Youth Climate Save and maybe how your educational tools have helped them.
Yeah. Well, Youth Climate Save, it's not only for people who are plant-based. I think the only thing that you have to do to get into Youth Climate Save is like if you're not plant-based, just be open to it, since we're talking about why it's so important. Because we don't expect everybody to already be able to, because some people really can't, like either they don't have the support from their parents or it's just not accessible to them. But they're at least open to it and they'll try new options. So um yeah, we started that, and I think that when we have these youth that are joining and they haven't really figured out about veganism, or they're hearing our posts, or when we have meetings and we talk about plant-based foods and why it's so important to switch to a plant-based diet, a lot of the youth who have joined and who aren't plant-based have ended up starting to switch to a plant-based diet and are educating their friends to go plant-based. A lot of their friends wound up doing it. So I think that that's one way that we've been inspiring people, is when we have members join who aren't fully plant-based, they're starting to make the connection and start to swap it out, because they realize how important it is and how needed it is, especially if they're constantly making posts about why it's so important to switch to a plant-based diet. Then it makes them really realize like, well, this is super important. So we've gotten a lot of youth to start to switch, and also with adults, because adults see the type of posts that we're making, and then they'll be like, well, if these youth can do it, then it's super important for me to do it. Or they see like these youth are super worried about their future on this planet, I want to do something about this. So Yeah, I've gotten a lot of people, and all the youth climate members have gotten a lot of people to switch to a plant-based diet.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so that kind of ties in with the theme of our conference this year is making connections and taking action, which is exactly what Youth Climate Save is doing. So I was kind of wondering, how do you connect with people who don't want to go vegan? I know that you were saying you still interact with people that don't have the same ideals or maybe their type of lifestyle, but how do you connect with them and how do their different opinions kind of change your mindset about it?
Mhm. Well, I learned from a really young age that I kind of have to meet people where they're at. So, like, there's some people that I'll talk to who don't want to go plant-based, but if they figure out about something that they're actually interested in, like if there's people that are interested about the environment and why it's so important to switch to a plant-based diet, then I'll talk about that. Or if they're really interested about the animals and they say like, oh, like they have pets at home or they love their dog, then I'll tell them why it's so important to not eat farmed animals. And then I also will talk about the health because there's a lot of people who really care about their health and tell them about the benefits of being plant-based. So I really learned to meet people where they're at. And I think with all the benefits of being vegan, people have to care about at least one of them, or especially if they have like a friend who's younger than them, or if they have siblings or kids, it makes them really realize why it's so important to switch to a plant-based diet because um, their kids or whoever they know who's younger is the ones that are going to be left with this planet. So it's super important, even if you're not doing it for you, to swap to a plant-based diet because it's super needed and it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think people are vegan or have a plant-based diet or have some kind of lifestyle due to something that they're passionate about. And it may not all be the same cause, but everyone has something that they care about. And I know that in some of your speeches, you kind of mentioned that how it's important for all of us to be activists. Why do you think it's essential for us to not just be vegan, but to also be an activist for the animals?
Um, I think it's super important to be an activist for the animals because then you're raising more awareness about the issue. Because at first, when I went vegan, I wanted to do more for the animals, which is why I started becoming an activist because I was thinking, well, like, what else can I do? And this is something that's super important because knowledge is power. So if you're teaching more people why you're plant-based, then that's going to get them to go plant-based. And I think that that's something that's super important because then they educate others about this issue and it can really make them start to see things different because when you're plant-based, like simple things like going to like the grocery store and walking past the meat section, like before I was plant-based, I never really thought anything about it. Like I just walked past it, but now like when you realize like all the pain and suffering that goes into these meat products really changes your mind on things. And I'm also more compassionate like with my thinking ways with anything. And I'm compassionate as much as I can be. And I think it's something that's super needed, especially in this world right now with all these issues going on and everything that is happening in our world. And you see on the news, it's we just need more compassionate people in the so it really changes people's minds. And I think it's something that is really important is just educating people, which is why it's so important to be an activist because you're really just getting out there and educating people on why you're plant-based and saying like, hey, I'm plant-based and here are the reasons why you should be too.
I love that. Yeah, I think the compassion thing is huge.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with all the issues happening right now, I think just a little bit of kindness can go a long way. And I know you've said small actions can lead to big change, like a little bit of compassion or kindness. Could you tell us maybe a small action the people watching can take to make a change for the animals?
Yeah, a small action I think is just like swapping out some of your food products. You could start with that, and then from there, then you can start swapping out more. And just once you start getting used to it, then you'll probably fully switch to a plant-based diet when you realize how easy it actually is, because sometimes it can seem like it's hard, but just simple changes like instead of picking a regular milk, you could pick plant-based milk, or instead of picking a meat product, you can pick a different meat product, like a plant-based one, because there's so many new options out now. And like even things like if you're gonna bake cupcakes, like swap out all the ingredients and try plant-based cupcakes. So just simple changes like that can make a big difference, and then you'll start getting used to it and start swapping out more things. And I think also if people are already plant-based, just educating more people, like even if you're at the grocery store and you see somebody looking in like the dairy section, telling them why it's so important to try a plant-based milk, or say like, oh, I think this oat milk is really good, you should try it, and then go from there. So just simple changes like that, or even just educating like your family about why you're plant-based, or at like parties, or if there's like a holiday going on, like bring your plant-based options so that they can try it. Because I think that's also something that is gets a lot of people to go vegan, is when they actually try your plant-based food. Because I think there's like some sort of like stereotype, kind of like plant-based people, they don't eat really good food, or it has a certain taste, or like they dance with like barefoot in the grass and hug trees, and just like some weird stuff, which I
Totally.
mean, some people, if that works for them, then I think that that's really cool. But I think that there's when you bring these plant-based options and they try it, like I have had friends come over and I've said like, oh, what's your favorite food? And then they're like, one of my really good friends, he came over after a protest, and he wasn't vegan at the time, and he's like, what are we gonna have for dinner? And I said, well, what's your favorite food? And he told me that he likes meatball subs. So I made vegan meatball subs, and that inspired him to want to go plant-based. And he stayed plant-based after that, actually. So I think by them trying food that is plant-based, it makes them realize like this actually isn't as bad as I thought it would be. And it's actually really good. And especially if you try it and you know all the benefits for it, and it makes you feel good after, and it tastes good, then it makes you realize like I should stick with this. So just letting people try your plant-based foods can really help.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think people realize how far plant-based foods have come and how similar to the real thing. If I think that's a big step for people, is getting away from the real thing, the meat and the cheeses and the milk. And so having something that tastes somewhat similar, or even I think better, it's huge. And yeah, like having that meatball sub, that's amazing.
Mhm.
Very easy to substitute these days.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me and sharing your thoughts and ideas.
You're welcome.
This has been amazing and we really appreciate it. I was wondering if there's anything else you'd like to share, or anything you wanted to touch base on.
Mm, no, I think I shared everything. The only thing, um, I have my nonprofit that's Genesis for Animals, and that one I've had for a while now. I do that and Youth Climate Save. I have Genesis for Animals. I started that before Youth Climate Save, which is
Wow.
we donate to sanctuaries, and especially during like the wildfires, like we'd give money to places that have had like their barns burned down during the wildfire, or they lost like their food, because I noticed how many sanctuary owners really love their animals and put them before themselves. So there's been times that I've heard that sanctuary owners have had to go without eating because they want to afford food for all of their pigs or their chickens or their cows. So I think that that's something that I really wanted to start. So I started Genesis for Animals, and I still continue with that. And I'll do like online fundraisers sometimes, or if like a sanctuary reaches out and it's like, oh, hey, like we need money for vet bills for our cow. Our cow was injured, or if they get an animal and they need to rescue it and the transportation. So I think stuff like that. So yeah, that's the only thing that I also have going on that I've been working on, is Genesis for Animals.
That's amazing. That's so generous and thoughtful of you. I mean, I think nonprofits do whatever they can to raise their own funds and make sure that they're safe and can take care of the animals, but you don't always consider what's going on with emergencies like wildfires, like you said. So that's amazing.
Thank
Um,
you.
is that a website? Is that just social media? How would we
Yeah.
find Genesis for Animals? And also, uh, your other organizations?
We have a website for Genesis for Animals and also a social media, and those are both just at Genesis for Animals. And then for Youth Climate Save, it's just at Youth Climate Save, and then people can just reach out and say like where they're from, and if we already have a chapter, they can join that chapter, or if we don't, they can start their own chapter. And then my own personal social media is just Genesis Butler with the underscore at the end.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was incredible and we really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely.